please welcome Lindsey.
Hello everybody, thanks for having me here today. I'm like overly excited just to see people face to face because my practice is 100% virtual, so I'm just home and online all the time with my kids and just seeing people virtually. So it's nice to see familiar faces and new faces today, so thanks for having me. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story and why I chose to specialize in PCOS. So as she said, I've been dietitian for, it'll be 10 years this October, which is insane to me. I started out at WIC, doing prenatal nutrition and childhood nutrition. Moved on to Hy-Vee for a few years, doing retail and community nutrition. Then on to St. Luke's to work in the cardio wellness center. Then after my second son was born, after he turned 1 actually, I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. But I still wanted to be in the field somehow, and I knew I wanted to do private practice. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do yet or how to make that work. So for the first couple of years, I did some just random freelance online work, doing freelance writing, recipe development, consulting online with different companies. And then I finally narrowed down what I wanted to do and chose PCOS. So I chose PCOS because I have it myself, and so I just felt like I could have the most empathy and really connect the most with that population since it's something that I have struggled with myself. I found out that I had it when I was trying to get pregnant the first time. So I had always had lots of different symptoms, but never diagnosed. I was told that I was probably too skinny to have PCOS. That's one common misconception. So I was always just told to take the birth control pill to cover up my symptoms. I never knew what was going on because I was always on the pill for years and years and years. So I finally got off the pill, couldn't get pregnant. Went to the doctor after a year. They did some digging and said you had PCOS. Here, take these fertility drugs to get pregnant. So I took those fertility drugs, didn't really like the side effects, had a lot of headaches, couldn't get pregnant. So I decided to dig a lot deeper into PCOS and actually dig into the research and how can I manage this naturally. Even as a dietitian, I didn't know a whole lot about it because you kind of get the main tidbits in undergrad, but I didn't really have experience with it. So I did a lot of research on my own. I read the work of other dietitians who specialize in this, and once I learned what I could do naturally, I started doing those things, and I was able to get pregnant. Then I was able to have 3 babies in 3.5 years. So it's definitely possible with PCOS to get pregnant naturally without drugs, or with drugs and kind of doing a combination of both natural drugs combined if needed. But it's definitely possible to get pregnant with PCOS and to get those cycles and periods back without having to resort to birth control. Whoops. There we go. So PCOS is very, very common. Depending on what criteria that you're looking at, it's anywhere from like 4 to 21%. But the most common criteria that people use, it shows that it's 1 in 10%, or sorry, 1 in 10 women, so 10% of women have PCOS, so very, very common. It is not as simple as, signs and symptoms include infertility, infrequent or irregular periods or ovulation, insulin resistance, excessive androgens or the male sex hormones, hirsutism, which is the extra hair like on your chin or neck or cheeks, alopecia, which is male pattern baldness on the head, polycystic ovaries and ultrasound, difficulty losing weight, depression, and other mood disorders. So how it's diagnosed, it's not as easy as just taking a simple blood test that says yes, you have PCOS or no, you don't. It's usually a diagnosis of exclusion. So usually they rule out lots of other things before they look at PCOS. The most commonly used criteria is a Rotterdam, and you have to have 2 out of the following: delayed ovulation or menstrual cycles, hyperandrogenism, or polycystic ovaries on ultrasound. And the name polycystic ovaries is actually kind of confusing because the cysts that they're referring to are not the same type of cysts that people get when they have like ovarian cysts that burst and that are painful. The cysts are actually immature eggs or follicles that don't make it to ovulation. So in a normal cycle, your body releases those eggs for ovulation. Those eggs are released and they're not there anymore. With PCOS, they build up over time, and they look like a string of pearls on ultrasound. They look like tiny cysts, but they're actually immature eggs. So it's kind of confusing. But you don't have to have that to get diagnosed, because you can have just 2 out of the 3. So that's why it's kind of confusing, and some people want to change that name because of that. There are 4 different phenotypes of PCOS. Type A, type B are going to be your most common and what most people really think about PCOS. So these women typically have the insulin resistance, trouble losing weight. Type C and type D are less common. These women are usually more lean. Type D is very controversial, and some doctors won't even diagnose PCOS with type D because these women don't have the excessive androgens. So with type D, you want to kind of look into it a little bit deeper and see if it's not something else. It could be hypothalamic amenorrhea. It could be hypothyroidism. So usually they do a little bit of digging to see if PCOS is what it really is. So the conventional treatment for PCOS is hormonal birth control, metformin, and weight loss. So birth control, we know, does help a lot with PCOS symptoms. It usually helps women feel better. It can improve the hirsutism. It can regulate their cycles, make their periods better. So it can be helpful for people. However, we do know that there are side effects with birth control. It increases your risk of blood clots, breast cancer, depression. It also depletes your B vitamins. And it, of course, doesn't get down to the root cause of that PCOS, and it doesn't help if somebody wants to eventually get pregnant. Metformin, it doesn't have as many side effects as birth control, but it does help a lot with managing that blood sugar, insulin resistance. It helps restore cycles, and it helps women to start ovulating again. The most common side effects are GI distress. So most of my patients who are on this have a lot of loose stools or just cramping when they start metformin. It also depletes B vitamins. So when somebody is taking birth control or metformin or both, I always recommend taking a B complex vitamin or at least a vitamin B12 supplement, since those drugs typically do deplete those vitamins. So then weight loss is the other thing that most women are told in their doctor's appointment. But it's a lot more complicated with PCOS. We'll get to this more in a little bit. It can be a double-edged sword because a lot of these women have already tried their whole lives to lose weight, and no matter what they do, they can't lose weight. So that just drives more and more disordered eating when they're given that blanket recommendation without really knowing that person's history. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So here are the labs that I like to see. Usually people only have just the very basic labs when it comes to me. They have fasting glucose, they have cholesterol, but they don't always have all these other labs that I like to see. So getting a full thyroid panel is really helpful, not just TSH, but also looking at T3, T4, thyroid antibodies, because a lot of people with PCOS also have hypothyroidism and get Hashimoto's. I like to see not only glucose, but hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin, because somebody could have normal blood sugar and A1C, but have excessive or high insulin. So usually insulin resistance precedes high blood sugar and pre-diabetes, so I want to see that before it gets to that point. If somebody is not on birth control, I like to see these different hormones. I want to see those on the labs. If on birth control, it's going to be thrown off, of course, from being on the birth control, but especially for fertility, I want to see all those different hormone labs. HSCRP is a good test for inflammation. And then vitamin D and vitamin B12, these are very common vitamin deficiencies with PCOS. A vitamin D deficiency in PCOS alone can stop ovulation. So it's very important to look at. We also know that it impacts mental health. Hemoglobin and ferritin to assess iron status, and then a full cholesterol panel. So we're going to talk about the different underlying drivers and common problems with PCOS, and I use these 4 categories to help women manage all of these symptoms with their PCOS. So nutrition, supplements, exercise, and stress reduction. Okay, so insulin resistance is one of the main drivers of PCOS, Insulin resistance and inflammation really work together. They're really good accomplices. They help each other out. They go round, around, around. So insulin resistance can be caused by chronic low-grade inflammation and genetics. To help people understand what it is, I like to explain that after we eat carbs, our body turns it into glucose. In a healthy person, that insulin, our pancreas releases insulin. Insulin is supposed to bring that glucose to our cells to be used as energy. When you have PCOS, that doorbell is broken, so insulin cannot open that door to get that glucose into the cells. So the pancreas just keeps excreting more and more insulin to get the job done, which results in excessive insulin. So insulin resistance can cause difficulty losing weight. It can also cause leptin resistance, so your brain thinks that you're starving and keeps storing more fat. And then those high leptin levels can inhibit FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, resulting in poor follicle development. It, of course, will increase your risk of diabetes. Physical signs include fat around the waist, difficulty losing weight, dark, velvety, pigmented skin, and also skin tags. If someone does have high stress, it's important to talk about stress management because we know that high cortisol can worsen insulin resistance. So to help improve insulin sensitivity with diet, a low to moderate carb diet is very helpful, but it's our job as dietitians and practitioners to help people figure out what that carb tolerance is for that person. It's also very important to teach them how to balance out those carbs on the plate. So never eat a carb naked, always have it with protein or fat, high fiber to help balance out those carbs. The supplements that help with insulin resistance and blood sugars include Inositol, berberine, resveratrol, cinnamon, chromium, alpha-lipoic acid, and selenium. Exercise also makes a huge impact on insulin. So studies show that at least 75 minutes of vigorous activity a week is very beneficial with insulin resistance. I like to recommend that after a meal, women get up and get some movement in. Even a 5 or 10 minute walk is really helpful in improving those blood sugars and insulin. So inflammation is the other common driver of PCOS symptoms. So for most women with PCOS, cytokines are constantly being released, causing low-grade inflammation all the time. This can directly cause the ovary to produce more testosterone. And it can also cause the fat cells to cause more insulin resistance. So signs of inflammation include headaches, migraines, even skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis can be signs of inflammation. Digestive issues, depression, and anxiety are all some signs of inflammation. Gut health is very important when it comes to inflammation because we know that gut health literally impacts everything in our whole body, but especially if somebody has impaired intestinal permeability, this causes a lot of inflammation. So it's something that you want to talk about to your patients and see how their gut health is. If they have multiple food sensitivities and food allergies, any type of like cramping, bloating, constipation, loose stools, these are all signs that they have some sort of gut issue going on, and we need to get to that root cause and bring inflammation back down. So specific foods that bring down inflammation include fatty fish, green leafy vegetables, berries, olive oil, avocados, avocado oil, a wide range of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and bioflavonoids. It's important to try to limit inflammatory foods as much as possible, so like your sugar and processed foods. Dairy and gluten are two things that are commonly recommended to remove with PCOS. However, there's not really research backing that up to say that's needed for all women with PCOS. It's very individualized. So for some women, they might get more inflammation with dairy and gluten, but not everybody. So it's something to take on a case-by-case basis. So for me personally, I can do small amounts of each, but I notice that if I do have too much gluten or too much dairy, I get a lot more acne and my symptoms just flare up a lot more. So you want to kind of take it case by case and see how each person responds to that. So different supplements that help lower the inflammation include curcumin, fish oil, Inositol, which is a precursor to glutathione, the big granddaddy antioxidant in the body, and vitamin D. When it comes to exercise, some exercise can actually increase inflammation. It really depends on the person. If somebody is chronically stressed, sleep deprived, under eating, over exercising, doing intense exercise is probably going to bring more stress to their body. So they might need to do more restorative movement like yoga or walking. So again, you want to go on a case-by-case basis. So stress also goes hand in hand with that inflammation. So it's really important to work on sleep, self-care, mental health to bring down that stress in the body. So excess androgens, another huge problem with PCOS. It's usually fueled by those two things we just talked about, inflammation and insulin resistance, but I'll kind of go over a few different mechanisms and why they're elevated in PCOS. So excessive testosterone inhibits ovulation, and one reason why is insulin stimulates the uterine theca cells to increase androgens, which inhibit ovulation. And insulin also reduces the sex hormone binding globulin. Its job is to grab onto that extra testosterone and excrete it from the body. So when it's inhibited, it's not doing its job. So that's another reason why testosterone can be elevated. GnRH pulses at a higher rate in PCOS. This can cause excessive luteinizing hormone, LH, and less of the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. Those two things are really, really important with ovulation, cycles, fertility. So that can make that ideal ratio of LH and FSH, it can make it thrown off, which will stimulate, the excessive LH will stimulate more androgens. So not only are hormones made in the ovaries, they're also made in the adrenals. So when stress is really high, the adrenals are what produce cortisol, and they can also produce excessive testosterone under a lot of stress. Signs and symptoms of these extra male sex hormones include the hirsutism, the extra hair, acne, alopecia, infertility, and anovulation. To improve these things with nutrition, we go back to the insulin resistance and inflammation. Get those things under control. Get those blood sugars under control. You can also do 2 cups of spearmint tea a day, has been told to improve the hirsutism. Green tea is another thing that's very helpful with getting that testosterone lower. And then also phytoestrogens in the diet can help a lot with getting those androgens down. Supplements for excessive androgens include Inositol, and then a combo of white peony and licorice, saw palmetto, are the main 3 or main 4 for getting those androgens down. Then again, exercise is important for decreasing these androgens since it improves that insulin resistance. And then also reducing the cortisol by getting stress lower. So here's just one visual that kind of shows how PCOS works. So fat cells and inflammation cause the pancreas to pump out more insulin, which impacts the ovaries by increasing the androgens and LH, resulting in multiple cysts or immature follicles, since these eggs never make it to ovulation. Okay, so now we'll go back to weight loss and eating disorders. So the majority of women with PCOS are overweight or obese. We do know that weight loss can help these symptoms, but as I kind of mentioned before, most of these women have already been told their whole lives by society, by healthcare professionals, that they're overweight, they need to lose weight. So most of these women have already tried multiple diets. That's led to eating disorders or disordered eating. They've gone on that cycle, the yo-yo dieting cycle. So we know that diets with PCOS do not work. They might lose weight eventually, but it comes back after time. So you have to kind of be really gentle when you're talking about weight loss and kind of see where that person has already been with their weight loss journey. I can have 2 different clients doing the exact same thing. One person loses 10 pounds, one person loses nothing. So it's very complicated. It's not as easy as just eat less, move more. It's a lot more complicated than that because of insulin resistance and hormonal imbalance. So it's something to just be careful with how you word things. I actually don't even promote weight loss per se. I more so promote these other factors, these other behavior changes that are going to improve their nutrition and overall health. A lot of times weight loss does come with that, but not all the time. So it's not something that I'm constantly asking my clients about, but it does sometimes come naturally with the changes that they make. As far as tracking, like calories and macros, that's something that we do a lot of times with weight loss clients. But when you go back to this person's history, if they've had a history of disordered eating or eating disorder, you have to be really careful with that. So for some clients, I just ask them how they feel about that. Like, is tracking your food going to make you more obsessed with food and make it more stressful? Or is it going to be helpful and keep you accountable and make you more mindful? So I kind of let the person decide what's going to work best for them. It can be helpful too as a dietitian to see what they've been eating while they work with me. So it can be a very helpful tool. But again, if it's going to cause more stress to them, then it's not going to be healthy for them to track their food. So then exercise with weight loss or just improving their symptoms, ask them what they really enjoy. So what kind of exercise can they actually fit into their lifestyle? What kind of exercise do you enjoy doing? Maybe it's getting outside with your kids and going for walks and then doing 10 minutes of push-ups and squats inside the house. Whatever is going to work the best for them is going to be the best type of exercise, but trying to get a combination of both cardio and weight resistance to get the full benefit of exercise. Oh, another thing. So I tell my patients when it comes to weight, when they ask me like, how much should I weigh for my height? I say, we will find your healthy weight when you are nourishing your body, your symptoms are improving, your lab numbers are improving, you're moving your body, you're getting sleep, your stress is improving, you're more at peace with your body and more at peace with food. When all those things come together, that's what your healthy weight is for your body. So we kind of talked a little bit about nutrition and diets for PCOS, but we'll go a little bit more in detail. So there isn't one magic diet like, hey, you have to go on keto or Whole30 or whatever. There isn't one magic diet that works the best for PCOS, but just trying to find a more anti-inflammatory, low to moderate carb diet, similar to the Mediterranean style diet. So a diet that helps bring down that insulin, helps bring down the inflammation. It has a lot of nutrients, so really focusing on those whole foods, foods that come from the earth and bring us lots of nutrients are what we're looking for, and then helping clients find that carb tolerance. So this obviously is going to vary case by case. Somebody who's training for a marathon is going to need a lot more carbs than somebody who is sedentary. So helping them find their carb tolerance by looking at labs. They can even wear like a continuous glucose monitor for a while. You can ask them how they feel after meals, after eating different amounts of carbs. So helping them find that carb tolerance is really helpful, but usually around 30 to 40% of calories coming from carbs is going to be the sweet spot for a lot of women with PCOS. And then again, helping them balance carbs with fat, fiber, and protein. So choosing carbs that are high fiber. So those would be your carbs that come from the earth versus the more processed carbs like white breads and baked goods and cookies. But also really promoting balance too. So helping them know that they can indulge sometimes without feeling guilty about it. I always tell them, if you can eat a very nutrient-dense diet 80 to 90% of the time, then you're good. It's okay if you want to go have ice cream with your friends or enjoy your favorite dessert. That's totally okay, as long as you're most of the time eating very balanced and adding that fat, protein, and fiber to your carbs. I do like to really focus on what to add versus what to take away. So instead of saying you can't have sweet, you can't have carbs, we say, hey, let's add more protein to your meals, let's add more fiber to your carbs. And also trying to find these diet changes that are sustainable. So we want to ask them, like, we want to make changes that are going to last a year from now, 2 years from now, the rest of their lives. So helping them make those diet changes that are going to last forever versus short-term fad diets. So like the keto diet, it definitely does improve symptoms because they're taking out all the carbs, so they're not having excessive blood sugars and insulin. So So that can be very helpful, but everyone I've talked to who has tried it in the PCOS world, it doesn't work for them long term, because when you have PCOS and insulin resistance, your body is literally craving carbs. Like, you have very intense cravings for carbohydrates. So taking away those carbs that they crave so bad can just make matters worse, and usually ends up leading into binging and, again, the yo-yo dieting cycle. So I usually don't go that route unless someone really wants to, but I try to focus more on that balance. And then again, focusing on gut health when you're talking about what to eat. So making sure you incorporate a lot of probiotic foods, prebiotic foods, getting a lot of variety in the diets, foods that can help with that intestinal permeability. And then make sure you always give your clients lots of examples of how to upgrade and balance their meals. Here's just a simple visual. We've all seen different revisions of this, but this is what I show my patients. Really focusing on the non-starchy vegetables and getting a lot of variety with your fruits and vegetables, lots of different color. And then your protein, about a quarter of your plate, focusing on high quality protein, like wild-caught fish and different animal proteins and eggs, Greek yogurt. Looking for high quality carbs of about a fourth of your plate. Usually anywhere from a fourth cup to a half cup is a good sweet spot, but again, it depends on each person. But making sure that they are high quality, high fiber carbs is very important. And then incorporating some fat into your plate. So that could be in the form of olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, the fat found in fatty fish. Okay, so when it comes to fertility and restoring our cycles, this is another huge goal for PCOS, especially if somebody is trying to get pregnant. They obviously want to get their cycles back. So if somebody's been on birth control especially, it can take them a very, very, very long time to get their cycle back. So this is a huge goal for women with PCOS. But not only for women wanting to get pregnant, it's also a goal just for every woman with PCOS, because you cannot produce the right amounts of estrogen and progesterone without ovulation. So it's very important to get those cycles back to a monthly basis. So as we discussed, insulin resistance and inflammation cause the excessive androgens, which all hinder ovulation. So again, getting back to those main drivers and getting those under control really helps. It does take about 3 months for a follicle or an egg to fully mature. So any change that somebody makes right now won't really show up in their cycle until 3 months later. So that's why it's really important to prepare the body at least 3 months before trying to conceive. But I always tell people that give it at least 3 to 4 months after starting the supplements I put them on and their nutrition changes before expecting to get their period back. Supplements do make a huge impact on ovulation. Inositol is going to be the most important supplement for ovulation. This is the one that I took and made the biggest impact on me and my fertility, so something I'm really passionate about. But both myo-inositol and D-chiro-inositol are needed in a 40-to-1 ratio. So you don't want to get just one type of inositol by itself. You want to get the 40-to-1 ratio because that's what's found in our bodies and what has been found in research to be the most beneficial in restoring ovulation and getting periods back. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Other helpful supplements to help bring those periods back and getting ovulation include Vitex, a high-quality prenatal if someone's trying to get pregnant, like Full Circle, Needed, or Seeking Health are all very high-quality prenatals. Fish oil, magnesium, and N-acetylcysteine are all really helpful. Magnesium is probably the best supplement when it comes to period problems, so things like cramping, headaches, extreme fatigue. Magnesium really helps with all those period problems, so it's typically a supplement that I put everybody on with PCOS because it also helps with depression and anxiety, which is really common with PCOS. Again, stress reduction is huge when it comes to ovulation. A woman's body needs to feel safe in order to ovulate and in order to carry a pregnancy. So if somebody is chronically stressed from being overtired, from not sleeping enough, or from stressing too much about diet and trying to lose weight, or under eating, over exercising, their body will not feel safe enough to ovulate because it doesn't feel safe enough to have a baby. So really reducing that stress is huge with PCOS and getting that ovulation back. So to find out if somebody is ovulating, I like to use basal body temperature. So for a lot of women, when they try to get pregnant, they go buy those ovulation strips that you can get at the drugstore. You pee on them. It says if you're ovulating or if you're not ovulating. That uses luteinizing hormone, which usually surges around ovulation. But with PCOS, as we've learned, LH is at high levels all the time, or most of the time with PCOS. So it's not going to be the most accurate way to see if somebody is ovulating or not. So because of that, I like to use basal body temperature. So you can get a special thermometer at the drugstore where you take your temperature every single morning before you get out of bed, plot it in an app on your phone, and it puts it on a chart for you. Or you can get a wearable device, like Tip Drop is one brand that I like, and it just automatically will upload it into your phone for you and show somebody what their chart looks like, and that'll help them to see if they're ovulating or not. Because somebody can have a period without ovulating. So just because you're having a period does not mean that you're ovulating. So that's why I like to make sure that they are ovulating by using that method. Another way is to look for cervical mucus. So when somebody's ovulating, their cervical mucus will look like an egg white consistency. It's like just like stretchy and looks just like an egg white. So that helps to keep the fertile window open for longer because sperm can live in there for about 6 days. So I have women check for that too, along with doing the basal body temperature. So here's just a chart that shows you what a healthy cycle should look like. So a healthy cycle is anywhere from 21 to 34 days, 28 days being average. The first half is your follicular phase, day 1 being the first day of your bleed. So in your follicular phase, estrogen starts to increase until right around ovulation is when it peaks. Around ovulation is when women feel the best. They're gonna have the most energy, you're gonna feel the most confident, your libido will be higher. So that's a good time to do the more intense exercise. That's a good time to work on a big work project that requires a lot of energy. You're just gonna feel the best that time of the month. And then after that ovulation, the estrogen starts to go down, and then progesterone surges. So again, without actually ovulating, you're not gonna have the same amounts of estrogen and progesterone that your body needs to feel its best and to work its best. Oh, oops. Okay. And then here's an example of what a BBT chart will look like when somebody is ovulating. So you can see here in the follicular phase, temperatures are lower. Right after ovulation, the temperature spikes, and then it's higher the rest of the luteal phase. So when somebody has PCOS and they're not ovulating, the temperatures are just all over the place, and you don't see any type of pattern, just really random. So here's what you're looking for to see if somebody is ovulating or not. So inositol versus metformin. They both do very similar things. They both help with blood sugar, they both help with insulin, they both help restore ovulation. So myo and D-hydroinositol are 2 separate vitamin-like substances. Again, the best ratio is 40 to 1. And I'll go over a few studies that compare inositol versus metformin. In one study, women took either metformin or inositol for 3 months. The inositol showed significantly better results in weight reduction, ovulation, and pregnancy, 46% versus 11. And then in 6 different trials, women with PCOS took either inositol or metformin. Both groups improved insulin and testosterone similarly, but metformin had worse side effects. And then another study, women took either metformin or myo-inositol. The inositol group had a better ovulation, 65% versus 50, and a better pregnancy rate, 30% versus 18 compared to metformin. And then in another study, women with PCOS who took either inositol or who took inositol saw greater benefits in improving depression, anxiety, and stress when compared to metformin. We also know that inositol improves egg quality and can regulate cycles. So mental health is another big thing to really address with PCOS. Women with PCOS are 6 times more likely to struggle with anxiety. They're also very likely to have depression, negative body image, again, the disordered eating. So it's very important to focus on this, and if it's a big problem, it's probably good to address this first, because we know that when somebody is feeling depressed and is feeling really crummy, they're not going to have that motivation to make any nutrition changes or exercise changes or take supplements, because they're just not going to feel good about themselves to make these changes. So it's super important to talk about this and to talk about different things you can do to feel better mentally, like positive affirmations. I actually have a whole list of affirmations I give people. Meditation, prayer, exercise, getting out in nature and going for walks are all really helpful things. And then diet can also make a difference on mental health. So again, going back to that anti-inflammatory diet, that's associated with better mental health. Specific nutrients for mental health include vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3s. And then daily restorative movement like walking or yoga can be really helpful. And then, of course, referring to a mental health specialist when needed. Okay, so endocrine disruptors are another big thing to focus on with PCOS. So endocrine disrupting chemicals are found everywhere. They can be found in plastics and body care products, in plastics in our kitchen, and cleaning products. But these chemicals are known to actually disrupt your hormones and to change the way your hormones work. They can even activate those genes for PCOS. So you can have a tendency for PCOS, but then these chemicals can actually turn on that tendency and cause PCOS in the body. So it's super important to focus on. Pregnant women, babies, and children are going to be the most vulnerable. BPA is the most commonly known chemical that most people have heard of, at least. It's also the most researched. So trying to teach women how to swap out different things in their personal environment can make a big difference on their hormones. So instead of using like a Teflon pan in the kitchen, switching to stainless steel or cast iron. Instead of using a plastic water bottle, again, the stainless steel or glass. Instead of using plastic bags, switching to the silicone reusable bags. When it comes to body care stuff, your skin is your largest organ, so it's going in, it absorbs everything that you put on it. So really focusing on ingredients in your body care products, which can be really confusing to know like what's good and what's not. So I recommend using the Environmental Working Group website or app. They have an app called the Healthy Living app that you can scan a product and it pops up and shows you the score, so you know if it's something that you should buy or something to stay away from. Same with cleaning products too. You can scan cleaning products and it'll tell you a score of that product. So I always tell people not to get overwhelmed with this, because when they first hear this, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to go home and like throw everything out, but you don't have to do that. Just do it one at a time. So I tell them when their shampoo runs out, switch to a cleaner shampoo next time. When your toilet bowl cleaner runs out, go buy 7th generation, whatever. But just trying to keep it simple and make these changes slowly and one step at a time can make a big difference. But we know that we can't live in a perfect bubble, free of all these different chemicals. So we're still going to get exposed to these things. So it's really important to help our body detox naturally. So we have a lot of organs in our body that help us detox, like our liver and our digestive system. So supporting those things through elimination. So we detox through urination, daily bowel movements, and sweating. So supporting those things with water intake, fiber intake, exercise, and sleep. Sulfur-rich foods are very helpful in supporting phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver. So your broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale are all sulfur-rich foods. And then dandelion root tea is also really helpful in supporting the liver in detoxification. Specific nutrients that help are glutathione, which again, NAC is a precursor to glutathione, vitamin C, B vitamins, and curcumin. And then limit excessive alcohol and any unnecessary over-the-counter medications. So PCOS does not just stop after we hit menopause. We usually focus more on PCOS during the childbearing years because we look at like cycles and getting pregnant. But even after menopause, we still have to really focus on those same lifestyle changes that we made earlier in life. So women with PCOS after menopause are going to be exposed to higher adrenal and ovarian androgen levels, so those male sex hormones can still be higher. The good thing is that the reproductive span of PCOS is going to be longer than most women, about 2 years longer. So you have a longer amount of time in life to get pregnant if wanted. Menstrual cycles usually improve and start to regulate too as you get older with PCOS. But the bad news is that a lot of the metabolic issues are still there, and they're going to be more intense in women with PCOS versus somebody without PCOS. So CRP levels, impaired glucose metabolism, and insulin resistance usually worsen. Waist circumference usually increases, and they're going to be at a higher risk for metabolic disorders like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and so on. So, as you can tell, we talked about a lot of different things with PCOS, and it can feel very, very overwhelming to clients after they get this diagnosis and hear all the different recommendations. So it's super important to really guide them through these behavior changes one step at a time. So I like to ask clients, like, what are your big overarching goals that you want for your life with PCOS? Then we break it down one step at a time. So, for example, somebody might say, my big goal right now is to get pregnant. So we say, okay, well, how can we make that happen? First, we need to get your periods back so that you ovulate. So to get those periods back and to ovulate, your 2 action steps right now are to start taking these supplements that I'm giving you and to start tracking your basal body temperature. So that can be their goal for the first few weeks. And then you just kind of move on from there. So really try to help clients narrow down what they need to focus on the most. And then just keep working with them until they reach their big goal. So only encourage clients to only make goals they can see themselves doing a year from now, to make sure it's something that is sustainable for them, because they like to get very ambitious at first and make all these really big goals, but then life hits and it's not very doable for them. So you want to really focus on those small, simple goals and taking it one step at a time. It's definitely better to get multiple sessions with women with PCOS. If you're a dietitian working with these clients, you want to work with them multiple times for the best support and accountability. So here are some additional resources, some different books and podcasts and training courses if you want to learn more about PCOS. And then I ran out of business cards, but if you want to contact me, here's my information. Yeah, that's it. Do you guys have any questions? Anybody? Go on, sorry.
What dosage of like the magnesium and things like that? Like, what do you recommend?
What dose?
Yeah.
For magnesium, about 300 milligrams a day is
What about
really
vitamin
good.
D?
And vitamin D, without knowing someone's levels, about 2,000. But if they're trying to get pregnant, 4,000 to 5,000 is what I like to see. But I would recommend that they get tested for sure to see if they need more, especially with trying to get pregnant and restoring ovulation. And we do know that with vitamin D, about 50 to 80 is the range that we want to see for the best results.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Well, thank you all for being here and listening. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I talk really fast, especially with caffeine, and I had like 2 cups today, so. But I had a lot of information to get through, so thanks for listening to